What's up, everybody? We are live right now on both YouTube and Twitter. Give us a second. We're going to be live on Rockfin as well. I'm here with Michael Caine from the Caine versus DeBlasio case. I know a lot of you all, after we did that coverage for RT, have been asking about this, and there have been some important case updates. So I wanted to invite Michael back onto the show to talk about not only the developments from what just transpired this past week, but what we can hopefully look forward to in the future, and also some of the initiatives that have been happening in New York. And we're now live on Rockfin as well. So what's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. I have with me a very special guest today. Michael Caine of the Caine versus DeBlasio case has come down to break down the case, as well as some of the implications from teachers being forced out of their jobs because of these mandates, and some of the initiatives going on in New York. I was very fortunate enough to meet Michael in New York when we were covering all the protests in the case for RT, and he was gracious enough to come back on the show. So how you doing, Michael?
Good. Thanks so much for having me, Niko. Pleasure to be here.
Of course, man. I appreciate you being steadfast in your activism and in your principles here, because I know that's in today's day and age, it's very, very difficult to do so, especially when they're killing your livelihood for doing it, right? So can you go ahead and start from the beginning, from the Caine versus DeBlasio case, and give people an update as to where we're at right now?
Yeah, so Caine versus DeBlasio is a case of 9 New York City educators who are suing DeBlasio, New York City, over the vaccine mandate to maintain our jobs. But very specifically, we are suing over the religious exemption process. We hold that process was fraudulent, illegal, and unconstitutional. And we filed this case in federal court, and we were in front of that judge. Actually, initially, we filed for a restraining order to get immediate relief. That was denied. Then we filed for an injunction, which is similar to a restraining order, seeking immediate relief. And that was recently denied in the Southern District Federal Court in Manhattan. So because that was denied, we have filed an appeal of it into the Second Circuit Federal Court. So we have an open case in the district, but the district turned down our injunction. So we've gone to the next level of this, of heightening this, and we are headed into the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. There are briefs happening where the lawyers argue it out on paper, but sometime during the second week of November, I believe it's going to be, there's going to be another hearing. I also want to just add that there looks like there's also a copycat case of Caine versus DeBlasio, which is a good thing. There are other educators who are suing on very similar grounds. They've even made some of the very same arguments we've had. They filed in the same court and they were denied in the same way. So because of that, they're going to be joining us in the Second Circuit. And now those two cases are argued and heard together. And there's a number of things that are beneficial about that. So while we have not been successful as of yet, I'm confident that eventually we will be, even if we have to go to the highest court in our country.
What are some of the benefits of having both of those cases in the circuit level at the same time?
One of the things is that we get double the amount of time to argue. So our side and our attorneys get to argue, and their side and their attorneys also get to argue. From what I'm told, that case has a very high profile Park Avenue law firm. I don't have the name of the law firm actually at this time, so I was just given this information from my attorney. And that's helpful as well too. So it's garnering more attention than just the one case. Now there's another case that is kind of signing off, saying like, hey, these arguments make sense to us, making very similar arguments. So it is just amplifying our position and our arguments to the court and to the country and to the court of public opinion, because also on November 3rd, this Wednesday, we are going to be holding a walkout protest at 1 p.m. on Broadway by City Hall, the Broadway side of City Hall. So please come down and support us. We're encouraging people, walk out of your schools, walk out of your jobs, walk out of society that doesn't want you right now, and say no mandates, no to these mandates that are pushing people out of society. I mean, before this was running, Niko, I was just bringing up how over 60% of African-American parents in New York City are not vaccinated. They are banned from their children's school. they cannot walk into their child's school. What is going on here? So we say walk out on November 3rd, this Wednesday. Come on out and join us. And for more information on that, go to teachersforchoice.org.
Unless you live in Florida, then I guess you just like stand in your house because, you know, there's no mandates here. But I'm like I said, it's, I don't know if you've heard about what happened with Ice Cube, how he gave up what, $9 million, that's not small potatoes. I don't care how much money you have. $9 million is $9 million, right? And especially nowadays, whenever money, I feel like it's especially with the entertainment industry, it's kind of it's very insecure because of the pandemic. For him to do that, it was, in my opinion, there's a rare display of principled consistency that we have not. It's been all too rare. And because of people like him, people like yourself, other people that I met in New York, it is inspiring to see people willing to kind of, I want to say fall on their shield. I do believe that at the end of the day, I think that the righteous are going to win this victory because it's just, it's too over. I mean, hell, Jim Psaki is literally getting COVID now. So it's like, what is the point of these mandates exactly at this point? If people are still missing work, if people are still getting hospitalized, now you're exacerbating these problems even more, in my opinion, with these mandates, especially within these lower income and communities of color. So we talked briefly about the grand scheme implications of these mandates, but you are a teacher in a very specific circumstance where it's a job that you have to have a certain specialization to do. And you were explaining to me the implications of that. Can you go ahead and enlighten the audience about just the detriments of people like yourself being held to the mandates when it comes to the kids that you teach?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm a special education teacher with over 14 years experience. I'm banned from my school building. I've been placed on an unpaid leave, a leave I did not request, but they have placed me on. And there, even NPR was reporting about how people from the central DOE offices were placed into nursery schools to be paraprofessionals for disabled nursery school kids, and they'd never worked with children before. The DOE system, what's happening there is crazy. There's tons of violations and students not being served properly. And now we're even seeing this is extending into sanitation, into the fire department, into NYPD, as they're trying to do the mandates onto my fellow union brothers and sisters that are resisting and fighting for freedom right now. What's going to happen when DeBlasio now is calling about volunteer firemen? I mean, that's something that happens in Mayberry. Does that happen in New York City?
You can't have volunteer firemen in New York.
I know. It's just insane, the thought process to me. But I also just want to add in one thing that you said that I just so appreciate. Shout out to Ice Cube. You know, I mean, growing up as a teenager, I listened to NWA and Ice Cube and followed what he did. And to see him take a principled stand means a lot to me. To see Nicki Minaj speak out and speak her truth means a lot to me. I was recently interviewed with Hawk Newsom, founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. He's taking a stand on this as well, too. Kyrie from the Nets, where there was a big protest over there, he's taking a stand on this. So God bless everybody that's willing to lose in the short term to win in the long term. I don't have a job right now. You know, I'm in a tough situation trying to figure out what to do, but it's worth it. This battle's too important.
Yeah, I agree. And hey, look, I think it might not be as long term as a lot of people think, because when someone isn't there to do their job, especially when they're really good at that job, I feel like the powers that be greatly over exaggerate how replaceable people like yourself are, right? People like even Kyrie Irving. Like it was kind of like a joke, but he wasn't really joking. The Nets are not doing that well right now. And Katie was like, "What do you want me to say? You want me to say it? Yes, we miss Kyrie. We miss him." And the NBA has, like, just as a specific example, has kind of made it clear that they want the Nets and the Lakers in the finals because that's where the most money would come from. And, you know, of course, they probably would want the Knicks, but they were not expecting the Knicks to be as good. And they were expecting the Nets, because they had three superstars, to be there. So now you're talking about a cascade of finances that are lost because you didn't get the results you wanted because of these dumbass mandates. Because once again, Kyrie could play in Madison Square Garden at an away game. He just can't play in Brooklyn at home games. So,
we're seeing so many of these nonsensical situations. Like, a teacher must be vaccinated in front of a room of 30 18-year-olds that are all unvaccinated.
Yeah. Or students at Rutgers have to be vaccinated, but the staff doesn't.
It just boggles the mind on what's happening here. And it just really is fascinating. What you bring up in terms of money is important. Everybody out there needs to vote with their money. If there is a place that is banning people for not having a certain vaccine status, don't give them your money. Don't go and patronize them, even if you are vaccinated. I have plenty of fully vaccinated allies that know what's coming. I'll give you an example of what's coming. In January of 2022 in Albany, they're going to start discussing biometrics in all New York City schools. So we're talking about retina scans, fingerprint, facial identification. Why? In England, there are already 9 schools that require facial recognition scans for the kids to buy their lunch.
Yes.
I mean, does this make any sense at all? Is this about safety? It's not about safety. It's about authoritarianism. It's about control. It's about taking away our fundamental rights.
Yeah, it's definitely not about healthcare, it seems like. And that's the frustrating part about all of this, is that it's constantly like we're being gaslighted all the time. And I think that a lot of people are beginning to realize that, just speaking from my experiences, a lot of people, leftists specifically, were very appreciative of what they saw from the coverage that we did in New York, because they had no idea how big this stuff had gotten. The mainstream media done a very good job of suppressing it, which is why I felt like it was such a big deal for us to get up there. And it inspired many people in the independent media to stop holding back, just seeing what y'all are doing. They reached out to me to tell me this. And that type of like I said, just the fervor that y'all have shown, and the consistency, because it's not, people might think it's been like a couple of weeks, a couple of months. I know in one form or another, many New Yorkers, Joe, for example, have been doing this for almost a year, over a year now, constantly and regularly. She tells me all the time she's exhausted every time I ask her how she's doing.
Well, Joe, you're talking about Joe Speaks Truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe's fantastic. She's a teacher's aide, actually, as well, too. She's on unpaid leave, just like I am. And she's just been a fierce voice of truth on the streets of New York City, just holding it down for a long, long time. And her and others with New York Freedom Rally really set the stage for, and really just hold that grassroots position for people like myself and then the police.
And BLM separating from the national level. Planting their flag, like, no, this is it. We're drawing a line in the sand. This is it. And the solidarity that we've seen that create, because there's always, these misconceptions, and some of it might be true in other circumstances, but there's a misconception that the BLM at local levels are like, walking hand in hand with the national level and everything they do. And, as a union guy, like it's never like that, right? It's always like just like every other power structure, I guess. There's like the national level, and then there's like the regular people up in the mud, so to speak. And now we've seen the solidarity across with them, and then the fire department, and then the NYPD, and then the teachers and the nurses, because everybody is kind of, this is it. No, like we might not like each other. We might not have anything to do with each other up until this point, but this is the point where we have to put all of that to the side and stand for something. So go ahead.
You make some excellent points there. Black Lives Matter Greater New York, as you said, has broken away from the national umbrella organization, that they're no longer affiliated. And it does appear to me it was over this vaccine mandate issue. And I greatly respect them and commend them for doing that. I don't agree with every single thing that they put out there, but I agree with them on this, and I stand with them on this. Absolutely. And we do see a lot of solidarity around a lot of groups coming together on this issue, because it's just too critical of an issue. If we let them do this, what can't the government do? And for me, I get the most satisfaction when those who are fully vaccinated for COVID say that they stand with us, because they get it, right? They made a choice with their doctor that they wanted for their medical care. That's fantastic. I applaud that. And at the same time, they recognize they are not my doctor, and they are not going to make decisions for me. So we need more of that, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's about the choice, man. All at the end of the day, yeah, there are people against the vaccine, and that's also their choice, and that's what people don't understand. Like, yeah, if they're against the vaccine, then get over it. Like, I'm against a lot of different types of food and a lot of different types of medicine, and I've never been harshly criticized for it ever because you weren't told by your television to criticize me over and over again, and so you don't care because my choices affect my life.
Right.
You get how that works. It's about the anti-authoritarianism above all else,
Yes,
and just solidarity. Like I can't really stress that enough. We've been missing the reason that somebody, I hate to get a little political here, but everybody at this point knows I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. If you go look at my Twitter handle,
me neither.
But I'll say objectively speaking, Joe Biden is just a trash president who should have never been there, right? We can't say in one breath, oh, Bloomberg was just horrible. Oh, but Joe Biden's fine. Like, no, I'm pretty sure Biden's like a worse version of Bloomberg, actually. And yet somehow our country was so divided and things had gotten so discombobulated in such a disarray that he was able to skirt to the White House without being dragged out the moment he stepped foot in the Oval Office by the people who live in this country. And that's because we're all being distracted and divided. And there's such a lack of solidarity on basic human rights now that they've been able to take advantage of it. So I'm glad that we've kind of reached this point, because somebody was almost, some of my friends, and they weren't trying to be malicious, but they were like, oh, is this a movement that NYPD wants to be a part of? Then I don't want to be a part of it. And I'm like, well, you're showing this caption or this picture, but you're cutting off the part where they're standing beside BLM protesters too, and fire department protesters and nurses behind them, and then teachers in front of them, right? It's like, maybe it's because this is the one thing where they were like, hold up, something is off.
Yes.
This can't fly. And the fact that it's sad that it took something this extreme to hit that point. But the fact that we are now at a place where we know, I mean, I usually call police officers fascist security guards because unfortunately over the last 6 or 7 years, they've been that more than anything else. But now they don't even have the people who are supposed to enforce these laws on their side. So what can the powers that be do once there's a real, cause I feel like that realization almost hasn't hit yet to some degree. Like, they can't enforce it. I'm sorry. Like, they can't. Even the police, they come in, like, they cheer everybody. I was there. I saw it. They were like driving by, the fire department was beeping at you and cheering on the protesters. The cops were cheering them on. I'm like, yo, this is wild. I never thought I would see the cops cheering on protests, but there we are. Against the government, against authoritarian laws. And we finally reached that point where everybody, at least on this one issue, is getting it.
Yeah. What other issue do we see NYPD and Black Lives Matter in agreement? We see that, and we have that. And just like, if anybody watched any of the videos that came out, mostly from alternative press, of the protest at Barclays, there was a little ruckus that happened. No real violence, but happened at the front of the barricades.
Yeah, I saw.
There was not a single cop anywhere around that barricade. And the next day, 20,000 uniformed New York City workers walked over the Brooklyn Bridge against mandates. So
that's why I found it was interesting in Brooklyn too. I was like, hold on, what do they mean it got out of control? Why not just call the cops? Oh, that's right. The cops aren't responding. You know, they're also not on, which I noticed because I don't wear masks on subways because, like, good God, it's already hard enough to breathe on the subway anyway. But there was no NYPD in the subway systems, which was weird. I was like, hold on, aren't they supposed to be making sure people don't jump the sub? And aren't they supposed to be enforcing these mask laws? But then the cops don't want to wear the masks either. So why would they be in the subway system where they have to wear masks when they don't want to be wearing masks? They don't want to be hit by these mandates. And it's just like, now you're starting, and people are kind of slowly but surely, people are kind of realizing, hold on, are the cops on my side this time? Do I not have to worry? You don't have to worry about them. What I'm worried about is like federal agents eventually coming in at some point. That's the kind of thing I'm worried about, just because we know how this stuff kind of escalates. But I'm like, there's way more of everybody else than federal agents. So
yes, that's true. I'm not sure what I'm worried about right now. I guess we have a long battle ahead of us. You know, this isn't going to be repaired in a month or two. You know, be prepared to slog forward in this for months ahead. I mean, I'm prepared to battle for years. This is a line in the sand for me. I'm not going to get this shot to keep my job or to work somewhere. Yeah. I'm not doing that. And if you don't agree with me on that, you should at least agree with my choice to not do that, because one day they're going to come and make a choice for you that you're not going to like either. I'll give you an example. If you want to file for unemployment right now, you cannot file for unemployment unless you hand over your facial biometric data to the government. So
in New York though, because it's not like that in Florida.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's not like that. So not yet, anyway.
It's just in New York State right now.
Hey, man, DeSantis has been on his best behavior. He's trying to get all the money that California and New York is giving up and bringing them down here. So he's been on his best behavior lately.
Niko, didn't DeSantis just offer bonuses to police officers, I believe?
Yeah. And they're paying nurses crazy money right now. Oh, hold on. Whoa. Okay, you back? You good? We're good? Back, okay, yeah. But yes, and they're paying nurses a good amount of money right now, like with no state taxes, like on top of it. And they just reached out to In-N-Out Burger and was like, oh man, look, I was like, we're gonna get In-N-Out Burger. I love me some In-N-Out Burger. But this is the cause of authoritarianism in a society where it just, obviously it's not as much of a free market as we would like. But when there is if you act silly, because you're pursuing your self-interest, well, it behooves the other person who's pursuing their own self-interest to take advantage of your silliness. Yes. This is how society works. And eventually it's self-interest that end up defeating the elites every time. And it's about the bottom line at the end of the day. And
in this country and the federal system that we have and the way states' rights works, it does work to the advantage of the common man sometimes. But there's a lot of problems with this country. This country was founded on genocide and racism and slavery, and there's no reason for us to ignore those things or to act like those aren't real. They're real and they're problems, and we need to know that. But the founding fathers did get some things right, and when they codified fundamental rights in the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, they got that right. And we should not be throwing that away, because no one is going to give us anything better than the Bill of Rights. When you hear people talking about new social contracts, be very, very wary about that, because they're not coming with free speech, free assembly. They're not coming with those things. So
we're building back better.
Yes. So it's a lot of these things and they'll give you some good crumbs in there. There's some things in Build Back Better that are like, that looks good. But be very, very wary of all of those things. I firmly believe that the Constitution and the first 10 amendments of the Constitution are the best we're getting as a society in terms of fundamental rights.
It's just it's making sure they're being upheld. That's the problem. It's not the amendments themselves. It's making sure they're being upheld. And I would say too, what's important to remember. And I'll let you get out of here, Michael. But what's important to remember, that a single great thing, monumental change in this country has ever come because of altruistic politicians. It's never happened. Everybody seems to think that's the case, but no. What happens is, because for example, people always talk about desegregation. I'm like, no, y'all do know that literally Congress was terrified that they were going to have get overran. That people forget about the lead up to those amendments, the civil rights amendments being passed, or equal rights for marriage, whether it be race. That was people fighting to the brink to get that overturned at the Supreme Court level.
Yes.
Marriage equality, that was 2014. That was a couple fighting to the brink to get that overturned at the Supreme Court level. Yes. Medical marijuana, that was fighting, and then culture, and then Wiz Khalifa at one point, and then everybody kind of jumped oh, why is this that bad? I don't even realize. It was people powered movements that forced politicians to change and act accordingly. And then they always try to kind of rewrite their history after, oh, we've always supported that. This is what we got done at the Hill whenever Democrats took over Republicans. No. It was people who did it. And y'all just happened to be in charge at the time. Y'all are the ones who couldn't fight it anymore. And so we kind of have to keep that perspective when we're challenging this type of authoritarian stuff like the mandates, because it's going to be the people. Yeah.
That's so well said. It makes me think of, Martin Luther King Boulevard or Malcolm X Drive. They'll co-opt anything, right? They'll take anything.
Oh God, don't get me started on that.
People forget that when Martin Luther King was assassinated, he was the most hated man in America, especially on the media. I'll tell you a little story. My father was in the army and was stationed in Georgia on the night that Martin Luther King was killed. My father walked into a bar in Georgia. They announced Martin Luther King's been assassinated. The entire bar screamed in celebration.
Yeah, I've heard several stories like that. Yeah.
My father was like, okay, I'm not in New York right now. But people forget where we come from and how things were. You're so right. It has nothing to do with politicians. It has to do with struggle. And that's why I want everybody to come out on November 3rd to Broadway side of City Hall at 1 p.m. We're having a walk out of your job, walk out of your school, walk out of society to say no to mandates. I'm going to be there speaking. There's going to be other rank and file union members or former union members currently on unpaid leave, people who are struggling to feed our families, but we're fighting the good fight. So come on out and learn more about it at teachersforchoice.org. And Niko, I can't thank you enough. You are such a great voice out there in the wilderness of media, allowing me to have all this time to say whatever I want, exposing people to our cause. You're just fantastic. God bless you, brother. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you doing the tough work on the ground and keeping up. And I mean, this case could be huge. It could be something that literally changes the outlook of this entire thing for the entire country. I know like the nurses had a pretty big victory. I don't remember if the court overturned that recently, but
I'll speak to that just a little bit. Last week was a little rough week that there were some cases that went down, but they're not out. The Supreme Court, the one that really caught people's attention was there's Maine healthcare workers denied a religious exemption. They filed an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said they wouldn't hear it. People got really upset. But you got to understand a couple.
Which is crazy.
But you got to understand this. Supreme Court rarely takes anything on an emergency appeal. It is extremely rare that they do that. And when you read what the justices actually said, at least 3 of them actually said they were outraged that these Maine nurses and healthcare workers didn't have a religious exemption offered to them. They were speaking in ways and saying things we haven't seen the Supreme Court talk about in 100 years since Jacobson. So while some of the news isn't breaking exactly the way we want, I encourage everybody, hold the line, stay tuned to Niko House. Stay tuned to the alternative media that's giving you the real deal, letting people like me come here and tell you the truth, and come out and support us, because it is the wave of the people that changes things. And if you're not there for it, you're going to miss history.
Yeah, that's very true, because we are in the middle of some shit. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's, once again, I'm over here ducked off in Miami, so like so people here are kind of aloof to like the rest of the real world, I call it, like, or the fake world, because this is my real world. But it's such an important moment, and I've seen people like yourself constantly stepping up to the plate, and because I've always wondered as a kid, when you're reading about a lot of this stuff in history books or hearing about it, you're like, yo, how do people find the courage to fight in these crazy battles? Like, when you know what's coming next, and then what they say, heroes they're not created, they're like backed into a corner, and then they're forced to be one, basically. And I
was backed into a corner for sure. There's no question about
it. And I see over and over again, and but it's how you respond to this type of adversity. And people have decided to respond by, just striking down authoritarianism wherever it may form, regardless of political background or social background. That's what we kind of have to continue to do. So solidarity with you and everybody in your case. And of course, all the New Yorkers constantly protesting up there. Definitely got to get back up there soon. I actually have a very good feeling about the next couple of months. Too many people seem to be kind of catching on, like, hold on, this is going to affect me. Or hold on, this is going to affect my family. Like, for example, even if I'm vaccinated, which I'm not, if I so I'm going to visit my grandmother because she's been sick in California. I can't go see her in a hospital if she ends up hospitalized while I'm there. And that's actually been making my grandmother sicker because she's worrying about us.
Yeah.
And she also, my grandfather before he passed just spoiled my grandmother rotten. He's the best husband ever. But like she's used to her grandkids being able to see her and be like, that's just how it's, but now because and so it's like, and it's weird. It's like, okay, so what's the point of me getting the vaccine if I got it and wearing the mask and making my grandmother wear a mask the whole time, if when she's in the hospital sick, I can't go see her? It doesn't make any sense. And God forbid something crazy happens, which shouldn't, but you just never know nowadays. And it's like, you told me all of this was so we can get back to normal. And in some states, it seems like it's actually gotten worse. Right. Because you got people now, they're not getting any unemployment. They're just working 2 days a week on minimum wage. You know, but I think that people are beginning to realize this is affecting me now in ways that I would have never predicted when I first agreed or supported all these mandates. And once that starts happening, a lot of people start kind of looking left and looking right, like, look, man, y'all might be on your own because this ain't gonna work. You know,
well, hey, I mean, from your mouth to God's ears, I hope that is the direction that we're headed. I'm also optimistic as well, too, because I've never seen an uprising quite like this, especially in New York City, especially when you're dealing with medical mandate situations. So, and as things get worse, they get better. Sometimes you need to be uncomfortable. Sometimes Americans are too comfortable. Things are too
sometimes we are. I literally bash myself about. I'm like, man, I probably am. I'm not desperate enough. You know what I'm saying? Which is crazy to say. I've been through a lot, but I'm like, there's somebody right now who's gonna wake up in the morning, their house could be bombed, and they know it. You know, and I'm sure that they don't have to get up and be motivated to go fight to survive. Right. And sometimes you're right. Americans, we just get way too comfortable with our comfort.
Now, there's a lot of uncomfort in New York and New York City in particular. And I feel good about it because we need to get uncomfortable. We need to fight for our rights and for our fundamental rights. Facts.
That's true. All right, Michael, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, come check us out at teachersforchoice.org. If you just DuckDuckGo, Teachers for Choice, you're going to get our Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Telegram. Not hard to find us at all. Teachers for choice.org.
Teachers for Choice. And I put that in the chat, everybody, and I'll put that in the description as well, so y'all can find it after. So with that being said, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Make sure you go support Teachers for Choice to keep up with Michael and the Cain versus DeBlasio case. Follow them on Twitter and on Instagram. And of course, go to their website. Like this video, share this video. It's very important that you share this video so more people are aware of this. Leave a comment below, but always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.